example body. These are, you don't collapse the waveform until you and that the entire total, no twisters were reported. So there were no twisters. So again, with the toad in the hole thing, you have something very strange where I believe, again, that the entire toad's body is in quantum superposition, wave-particle duality. It doesn't, you don't collapse the waveform until you break the rock open. So this is like the wave-particle duality, but now it's a frickin' toad. So this is what happens. These are actual images. I showed you a couple of them on Twitter if you were on my X page. You have a frog or a toad that shows up when you break open the rock. At the moment you break open the rock, you've collapsed the vacuum domain. You've collapsed that frog into our reality. So now he starts experiencing physical life in linear time. But sometimes, apparently, these portals get stuck in the rock and they just don't come out of this non-temporal state. So the frog isn't really in our reality. He's living in time-space. You break it open, you collapse the wave function. It's no longer in superposition, and he consolidates back into his body. His atoms are no longer above light speed. He consolidates into a living being, and he's still alive. And sometimes they jump away. This is another example where they were digging out this rock quarry. As you can see, they're building some little doorway over there on the right. They were cutting this rock out of the ground. And you got to increase the contrast on this image a little bit. In fact, let me actually do that right now. So I want you to be able to see this. So just hold on a second. In fact, let's go to this other camera angle here so you can see my lovely face. I'm gonna make another copy of this, and I'm going to tweak it in the arrange, and I'm going to increase the contrast if it will let me do that. Let's see if it will. Image, okay. Exposure and saturation, this ought to do it. Okay, yeah, there we go. So saturation. Okay, now I've got it. All right. That's all I needed to do. So this is the original image again. And you see the frog. So the frog's body is perfectly... Oh, we had another donation. We had Heidi Begley. Be encouraged. Keep up your excellent teachings. Yes. I mean, this really is... This type of material is some of the stuff that I would always go into when I was in front of audiences, typically my all-weekend conferences that people would pay to come see. You're pretty much always going to hear this stuff. I would do some version of this most of the time. Peace Abel says, I used to see my grandma on Easter. This year I have to settle for Tramma. Who loves you, baby? Tramma loves you. Okay. Anyway, so this very, very fun science. And again, I used to always sell this information. It's kind of weird to give it away for free, but you know, hopefully we're about to get a deal and then I'll have enough money that I'm not going to be scraping the bottom. But still, I really do appreciate your donations either way. It's nice to be paid for my work. So thank you guys for the donations. Vakapalo. Does the fact that the stones are alive have anything to do with toads being kept alive too? Yeah, that's a great point. They do exist, again, in a quantum superposition. So they're neither in past, present, or future. They don't exist in time until you break open the rock and collapse the wave function. D Earth Observer says, you are loved. Woo, I love that. Thank you very much. Could this wave collapse be also happening in tomb-like structures in pyramids or caves? Absolutely, that's the point. The pyramid is an ascension device and you're going into a time portal. So the King's Chamber effect that causes ascension is the same thing that keeps the toad's body stuck in quantum superposition, interestingly enough. So this is the illustration, and if you can't really see it very well, I'm going to do this. I just created a contrast difference. Now you can actually see right where they dug it out of the ground. This was in the 1700s. Under the surface of the ground, that blacker area, you see the image of a frog there. So they literally quarried this out, and they found this frog. I don't know if this one was alive or dead, but the image of the body is perfectly preserved in the stone. Another interesting point is that the frogs, sometimes when they come out as the color of the stone because there's blending, there's matter blending between the rock and the body of the frog. So the frog is not green, the frog comes out gray if you have gray stone. Very, very interesting, but there's many, many cases of this happening in history. It was a major scientific paradox that people were studying for centuries. And then after the 1800s, it all just mysteriously disappeared. But this is another ancient, archaic illustration. And what you see there is all these people looking at this frog that, again, came out of the stone after it had broken open. It freaked them out. People were studying this for centuries. This was an example of a case where you could actually have the rock. It was on display, and people could look inside and see the image of the frog. There was an infamous case where there was a church, and it was on a Sunday, and there was an earthquake, and one of the blocks up from the top of the church fell and hit the ground, and it scared a bunch of people because it was right in front of them. And the rock broke open, and here comes this frog that just came out. Well, that's, again, the weird application of this portal science. How do you explain something like this? Well, this was one of my many eurekas that people say, you know, David should get a PhD. Okay, I don't really need that. But yeah, this is definitely PhD-worthy type of dot connecting, I would say, because it collapses the wave function. So if you've ever wondered about that Disney cartoon where the frog comes out, hello, my baby, hello, my darling, that is basically a cartoon adaptation of the legend of the toad in the hole. This was so infamous in Britain that there was actually a real, honest-to-God breakfast meal created of sausages inside tasty, crisp Yorkshire pudding, which is basically just like bread. So you essentially create the dough and you create the two sausages, you cook it up. They are absolutely delicious, you know, and so that's called Toad in the Hole. So Aunt Bessie's is actually a brand where, again, this is so well known. Two thick pork sausages and tasty, crisp Yorkshire pudding, toad in the hole. Doesn't sound very appetizing. Who would want to eat a toad? But this was based on how many people had seen these live frogs coming out of stone. Here's another example. New and improved butcher's choice toad in the hole. British meat. Okay, you know. And then we have irresistible toad in the hole, just the way you like it. Well, there's a lot of places we could go with that. It could get very sexual, but we're not. Oh my God. Anyway, you even can get vegetarian toad in the hole. If you love toad in the hole, I'm going to be really careful now. If you love toad in the hole so much, but you can't eat those meats, you're just a vegetarian, you can get your vegetarian toad in the hole. Unbelievable. So this is your grand overview of the portal science, folks, the portals of space and time. And I think we're going to continue on this next week, and we're going to talk about how your pineal gland inside your brain creates portals through the same exact physics that I've just been describing. There's an inversion of time and space. There's a little ball lightning inside your brain, and you can amplify that with meditation and cause a halo to form over your head. That's actually a portal that you can then travel through with your whole body. So that's one of the other really, really amazing things that it's worthy of a whole new show about the time portals. And then also, we're going to cover Professor Simon Schnoll next week. I wasn't sure if I'd do it this week or not. Didn't quite get the time, but we're going to cover him next week. And this is talking about how all of the matter and chemical reactions in our reality, radioactivity, everything fluctuates up and down in very interesting ways, and this has huge ramifications for portals. And the whole idea, remember Joe Parr? And I was talking to you about this guy who rotated pyramids, and then he'd get anti-gravity, and then the pyramids would dematerialize just from rotation. But only during certain times of the year would this happen. So the portals are very much the result, as Dmitriev said, of solar activity. When you get high solar activity, you get more portals. Thus, when we get the big solar flash, that is when the sun is going to explode out all these portals at the same time. And all of a sudden, at that point, the laws of physics are all bent out of shape, and you can see outside of linear time. You might even levitate. And this is essentially the scientific definition of rapture. It's very, very fascinating. So, we got it done in 2 hours. Can you believe that? I actually have 5 minutes left. I try to keep this part of the show to 2 hours if I can. So again, it feels like I've just given birth, sort of. It's like, wow, So much great stuff that we can talk about. So I want to bring you now into the applied science. We talked about the portals. Yeah, it's really fascinating, but who cares about ultimately what difference does it make in my life? Son, you're trying to tell me that in my life, my everyday life, that some frog is caught in a rock and you break open the rock and he comes out and he appears to be fine. I don't even care. I'm just worried about paying the bills. I have had it. Well, yeah, you don't... It doesn't really affect your life. Okay, I'll take Daddy's position for just a second. What does all this stuff have to do with my life? You're saying the buckyballs are turned inside out. You're saying a cannonball is getting lighter in weight when it hits the ground. Who the hell cares? Well, you should care, because if your body is exposed to these portal energetics, you now can see outside of linear time. If you get inside one of these portals, you can travel through space and time. The White House admitted it this week. Sorry, Stephen, it's true. So, you know, he's our one hater. We got one guy who just keeps doing it. But anyway, where is the application to where it becomes spiritual, where it becomes something that really matters to us? And the answer is the application is in ascension. The King's Chamber in the pyramid captures the portal in the King's Chamber sarcophagus. Apparently, Jesus completed his initiation in the pyramid. The pyramid creates a portal down in that tesseract at the bottom. It goes up through the tubes. The pyramid captures it like a funnel. Same way that a glass is going to hold water inside. There's this fluid-like energy I was talking about that the universe is made of. And the geometry has these bubbles rising over it all over the world. So the Bermuda Triangle has portal effects from the geometry. The pyramid has portal effects. And the King's Chamber can accelerate your ascension. You can get it done faster. But when the first wave of ascension happens, which Michael has told us is going to be in the year 2025, these portals come out of the sun all at once, and it kicks us over into ascension. Now you've validated the Christian concept of rapture, the Hindu concept of the Samvartaka fire at the end of the age. Zoroastrianism calls it Frasho Kareti, that the world will be made wonderful. Apparently, these portals start coming out of the sun so much that we now essentially are in like a weird borderline between space-time and time-space, and it's no longer so difficult to go over to the other side. It's easy to cross between realities now. That's what the angels are like. They can live in both realities at the same time. So this is incredibly fascinating, because where this portal science really comes into view is the angelic extraterrestrials, the positive Christian ones, are telling us that after this 25,000 year period of time, the sun is going to give off a big flash, and we're going to get this transformation of time and space. So this brings us to, with my own pineal gland, whatever I've got there inside my brain, I started to listen to the radio of the angelic kingdom, following, Christian protocols. We did it in the name of Jesus. We asked for only the highest and purest Christ light imaginable to come through. And I began listening, and this is one of the things that most people don't do, but it's part of your birthright as a human being, that you can listen to the voices of the angels, and if you do it right, they will be very, very accurate. So I started to document all my dreams on tape or cassettes. This is in 1999. There was 21 tapes that we didn't get into the first 7 books that I wrote between the years 2022 and 23. We found these 21 tapes only as of last September. And ever since then, if you've been watching the show, every week we are using the time portal that I created with my pineal gland to communicate in 2025 from the year 1999. So there's some angelic being calling himself Archangel Michael. I used remote viewing protocols, supposedly 99% accurate. You screen out your conscious mind, you get 99% accuracy. So these tapes, we can put them into the tape machine, you can play them. I transcribed them. The transcripts have been living on my computer, my hard drives, ever since 1999. I can absolutely prove that this is real. Most of this data was already online by the year 2000. I published it on my original website, divinecosmos.com, which is now an archive site because, again, they've gamed out the system online. It's really no point in making a website anymore because if they don't want people to see it, they're not going to see it. None of my stuff's on Google anymore, by the way. But anyway, so we've been going through this week after week. These tapes right here are prophetic of what's going on in the present and in the future. So this is where, okay, you know, David, I'm starting to see what you're saying. This is an applied science, right? It's not just that these portals exist. Oh, Ed Creeder, wow. He donated $123, and he said, Happy Easter, Trama. Thank you, baby. Thank you so much, Eddie. We love you. We got Sonia Himojo, $44.44. She donated that right there. So you can see at the top. Here's to future wanderings beyond the limits of what we think we know. Honestly, I feel about as good. Oh, David Wilcock, you got a big donation. I don't know if I missed another one here. Let me see if I missed any of them. Yeah, there's, let's see. Kenneth Bates donated $200. Thank you for that. So yeah, there's a lot coming in. Thank you guys. And let's see if I missed another one. Richard Whitney, we got that one. Okay, yeah, I think I got them all. Anyway, so you guys are awesome, and I really appreciate. Yeah, this is probably one of my most favorite shows because I really got into the meat of how this works. That there is water. We'll talk about it next week, but there's water inside your pineal gland, and the crystals inside the water are actually DMT. And dimethyltryptamine, I don't want to get into all of it right now, but you can hit dimethyltryptamine with a hammer and you get colored light. It's called piezochromatic or piezochromatic. So these crystals actually vibrate and they release full color light. So there's a television going on inside your pineal gland. All the inside of the pineal gland is retinal cells like the eye. So it really is actually a third eye, and it wires into the visual cortex of the brain. We'll talk about that next week. Once we get in the pineal gland, it's going to get very, very interesting, folks. So anyway, the point is inside your pineal gland, as you fall asleep, it's electromagnetically shielded. We know this. They've studied it at Area 51, places like this. The water inside your pineal gland, those crystals of DMT, turn inside out. They begin broadcasting visual images from the other side, and you can also get sound. So the sounds come through, the visual images come through. Lo and behold, you can have telepathic communication outside the boundaries of time and space. That's what I was doing with, again, the Archangel Michael time loops. So I don't want to keep on explaining it. Let's just get into the data. We had a prophetic client reading for Robert, his name was, came in on March the 12th. So all I've had to do week after week is just read my transcripts beginning on January 1st, 1999, is where we started last September. Every single week, it has delivered and delivered and delivered. So this is where it's not going to be so scientific anymore. Now we're getting into the esoteric world of angelic beings who used my equipment. The fact that I was doing this, they got me on track and they started predicting the future right away. Now I've got 7 books you can buy about it called the Michael Prophecies, but this one in particular is fascinating. So I have dreams and I have the words that I would then speak as Archangel Michael that come in week after week, and they have been tracking the Alliance. They're all about the mass arrests. They're all about the fact that once these arrests take place and the world realizes, oh my God, there was all this evil going on, then we get eventually the first wave of ascension. Apparently it's going to happen this year. It seems hard to believe. I was like this past week, I'm going, man, we're running out of time. We're already in April. We're in the year 2025. Is the Alliance ever going to do these arrests or not? And then we had these phenomenal pieces of news come in this week, documents being released, wars being wound down to a close. The truth of autism is going to come out. 10,000 RFK documents coming out that just happened. The lab leak is now being talked about, all this very interesting stuff. Michael knows everything. He's telling us where we are right now in time, and he's telling us where the future is going to go. And since everything's been accurate right up until now, it's probably going to be accurate as we go forward. So this is my life is very exciting. I mean, I'm looking forward to helping the Alliance. I'm looking forward to getting out there on a bigger level and not just being alone. I mean, it's freaking snow outside. You'll see that on the turkey video here in a minute. So March 12th, 1999 is the latest one that we have today. Right away, we got a prophecy of COVID. It's incredible. It's the very first thing that happens. Remember, this is 1999. The beginning of the dream that I was remembering, because remember, when you're in dreams, you're outside of time, you're in time-space. So everything's a little bit different, and you're seeing outside of linear time. So I said here that the beginning felt very, very diseased in some ways, that this was rough stuff, I said. In my earliest dream, the theme was disease. And I didn't know, I mean, nobody knew in 1999 what was going to happen, but higher beings probably did. You know, that's what we're looking at here. It was talking of some great disease. Well, there you go. That's what we all went through starting in 2020. But then I say a disease within the spirit. So the dream always has to have some degree of metaphor and symbolic encoding. But yeah, dude, right away, okay, prophetic dream, check. So it's all about COVID. So I woke up too early and I couldn't really dictate that one. I fell back asleep. In the next dream, I found myself in my old bedroom where I grew up as a kid, Scotia, New York, and there was a shadowy, malevolent, dark-robed figure standing there. Now, at the time, I didn't realize that I might have actually been UFO abducted by grays, but this is going to turn out to be a gray, and I actually say that at the end of the dream, that it turns into a gray. There was a little girl there in the room with me as well. This was a very evil being in a dark robe. The being was very real to us in the room. So I didn't know about all this grays being evil or anything. I mean, back in 1999, I just assumed that the grays were good. I didn't know about the fact that they taught Aleister Crowley how to do demonic summoning, that they are predators who puree human bodies and then soak in that material, and that's what they feed on. So they're actually vampires. They're very evil, dangerous creatures. So if you were scared about the grays, you had a damn good reason to be, man. And we're all learning about it now. So this is what's really running the DS behind the scenes. So it was very real to us. He had on a black cape that went around his head. His face had the consistency of light white modeling clay. The eyes were swollen and they were set funny on the face. There was a skeletal look to him, like a skeleton built up with modeling clay. So I said here that the grays are essentially undead because in order for them to stay alive, they have to vampire and puree the human body like a human smoothie. And again, they're the ones that taught Crowley how to summon demons, which then spread out to the whole inside group of the DS. So this weird, scary demon being was causing us great fear. This girl and me were there together. There he was. You had this horrible, demonic-looking thing standing right there in front of you. He was taunting and teasing us. He was very mean. So again, this is prophetic of what's happening right now, especially if you're watching my show or you're in the truth movement, you're learning, yep, sure enough, we're facing down against a satanic DS, and we're seeing it now for what it is, that these types of beings and reptilians are the ones that are actually controlling the people on Earth that are participating. You get very wealthy, very famous. You might have a position in government. They have secret occult ceremonies. They create these portals. Demons get in through them. As somebody is dying, they create that bubble of time and space, and the demon hijacks that and gets in. So the gray taught Crowley how to do this. The little girl was very scared of him. He scared the piss out of both of us. There was nowhere to go. So another layer of this, as I said, is his parallel life memory. Apparently I was abducted, and I did have demonic grays visiting me in my room at night. So the dream is partially a memory of something I apparently went through. And of course, Stephen is going to be snickering, but nobody really cares what he thinks. We all know it's one guy. This also seems to be about humanity finally seeing the villains for who they are. So yes, this is very prophetic to the present because the big reveal of, oh my God, these beings really exist, that's what we're all going through right now. That's what our present moment is all about. So it's a very, very prophetic dream of what we're now seeing. And remember, it started out earlier, the theme was disease. So there's a connection there. Then my character and the girl grew up and became adult. That's what ends up happening. We flash forward in time. There's a man and a woman standing there. Now they look like medical professionals. I saw one of their faces and he was smoking, and this was massively important. Today's client was a heavy smoker. As you know, I had my own challenge of, man, this hair just... Okay, there we go. I think I got it now. I can see all the flyaways because I have the focus lines anyway. So I had my own, use of cannabis, which I've now recovered from sober, but I've had my own challenges with that. So this is personal to me as well. We had a donation come in. Annie Rose. See, I can even see it out of the corner of my eye. Annie Rose, 911, 1999. Thank you very much. So again, smoking was important, and I've gotten sober now, thank God. The man had a pair of glasses on with silver frames and tin rims. This represents me in the dream. He had deep blue shirt with a tie and dark pants. He was wearing a white lab coat like a doctor. So part of this, I think, is parallel life memories where these evil greys abduct you and then you're brought to medical experiments done by humans. The reason the humans don't typically travel in the UFO is that you get transdimensional disorder when you travel through time and space in these craft. And so they use grays, but then the grays bring you to a place where you have a military abduction, and there's humans who can bring you in there. And the way this works is that the UFO brings you back to your bed, and you don't remember anything from what happened except in dreams. So you think you only had dreams, but you were actually abducted. And again, that's because as soon as you go into the UFO, the gravity is turned off, time is turned off, and you go into a timeless realm, and you don't remember anything that happens to you in that timeless realm except like a dream. So they can abduct you. You don't even realize that it happened. You don't remember anything by virtue of how this weird physics actually works. So my character and the little girl in the room had now grown up. Now we were scientists. And we were still talking about this entity that had scared us so much as a child, this malevolent hooded being. Then all of a sudden, now this is going to be talking about the COVID breakdown of society. I was standing by a river. A large crowd of spectators were lined up on either side of the river. There was some sort of show in the water going on. Then I said, okay, we got our first quote coming in for Robert right at this point, and it said, keep the quote needing alignment to a minimum. It's a very cryptic phrase, and I think it means the reading did not come from the deepest possible level, because at the time I was getting kicked out. This woman had broken up with me, Marcia. I was having a lot of stress, so alignment in the law of one, when alignment is mentioned, it means that they're not getting the best feed. But again, it's a darn good reading. It still has time loops. It's just not quite as deep as some of the other ones because I was going through a lot of stress. Violence occurred on this river. It escalated into a violent event so fast that I was dazzled by it. It was terrifying. It all started with a guy who was obviously boating. He was in some sort of small craft, and this appeared to be part of a water show. He was holding his hands on the edges of the craft, and then he rowed through the central area of a river with people on either side. The central area was crossed by two other people on a big scaffolding, and they were dressed up like circus clowns with golden, sparkly clothing. And the clowns had these two swords, and they were swinging them all around very dramatically. I saw the clowns coming towards this guy with the two swords as he was riding on the boat, and they spun the swords around dramatically. Okay, so what are we getting here? What is this symbolism really about? Well, if you look at the DS's cartoons and all of the characterizations of 47, they always show him as a clown-like figure. They want you to think of him as a clown. They want you to laugh at him. They want you to be afraid of him. They want you to think that he's volatile and ignorant and emotionally driven. And so the clown is the projection of how they see him. And now, again, he's in the presidency. So they've got this big pageant, and there's everybody lined up to look, and he's got colorful clothing on. He's swinging these swords around. Well, that's the cuts that he's making with like the efficiency department. And again, people like my father, people who watch TV, they're very afraid. They look at him as a clown. He's swinging these swords around. It's very dangerous. The guy in the boat actually represents the target of this administration, represents the DS. So that's what this dream is really about. So, and I'll show you why, okay? But just bear with me. I've already deciphered this. I know what it's going to turn into. So the clowns represent the administration. The swords represent the cuts that they're making to all these budgets. And there's this vigorous, vigorous fight going on. So what's going to happen? Ooh, wow, we had another big one here. Jeannie888 donated $200. Man, today is a great day. We are risen in the ascension. Happy Easter, yes. And we already got 11. I'm going to click like on that myself, make it up to 12. Oh, they don't let me do it. I'm not allowed to do that. I think I can do it up here. Okay, boom. So I will say thank you to Jeannie. Thank you very much. All right. Now she's up to 18 and 2 comments. Excellent. So thank you for the donation. It really does help us out greatly for you to continue to donate. So again, the clowns represent this administration, the cuts that they want to make. They're swinging the swords around. The guy in the boat, he seems vulnerable. He represents the DS. And we just saw the demon right before that, the gray. So this is the gray is influencing the guy in the boat. The clowns were supposed to chop the swords down to either side of this guy's boat. They wanted to make people ooh and ah that it was so close, but it was all really a trick. So again, they don't really want to hurt anybody. They just want to save the planet. People like my dad, people watching TV, they don't really see that yet. The 2 clowns were in a red thing with golden stripes on it. I'm not really sure what that represents, and I never explained it. But red and gold, you know, those are definitely colors that are associated with like blood and treasure. Red would be blood. Gold obviously is like wealth. And of course, 47 is wealthy. So the clowns came down and were swinging the knives around very dramatically. This is what's happening with all the budget cuts. And it was supposed to be a trick. At the last minute, before the clowns got up to the boat, they hit an eddy on the water, and then they all of a sudden slid in one direction. As a result of that, the sword came down very, very close to this guy's pinky finger on the left hand. And this symbolizes how most people think, most people who are in the media, certainly not the majority because he won, right? But most people who are watching television think he's making mistakes, they slid off track, and he's missing the mark. The DS is then projecting this idea that their new administration that we're in now is negative, clownish, and destructive. Okay, so that's what this is about. The guy became incredibly angry from this theatrical attack that nearly cut his hand, even though it didn't. So the guy in the boat is now incredibly angry. This represents the DS and how they're going to lose control. He grabbed a sword out of the boat and somehow managed to throw the boat in reverse. He then turned around and lopped off one of the 2 people dressed like a clown, lopped off one of their hands. What is that about? Well, the DS is constantly attacking 47. They're trying to make it impossible for him to govern. And remember, he actually was shot through the ear. And one of the very, very odd entangled things between him and me here is that I have this, I guess you can kind of see it there. There's a ring right here on my ear because a pole to set up a tent, a hollow pole, about that big, you know, went right through it. Same injury, same place is one of the strange forms of like quantum entanglement between him and me. So this is talking about assassination attempts. This is talking about the bullet going through his ear. In this case, in the dream, it's far more dramatic. They tried to cut off his hand. But again, they're trying to cut off the hands of the administration. They don't want him to be able to do anything. So this is a very violent symbolism. And they are doing this all the time. So this is, again, very time looped into the present. It's